The night the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps released its footage, the images were plain and polished. Commandos in blackboarding ladders, the silhouette of a container ship against a low horizon, the purposeful choreography of an operation edited for effect. Two vessels, both linked to the Mediterranean shipping company, were shown under Iranian control in the approaches to the Strait of Hormuz. Video cutaways, close-ups of sailors and crew, and the firm declarative voiceover left no ambiguity about the message being sent. From Tehran came a statement that left no room for misreading. A senior researcher at a Tehran-based Center for Strategic Studies said plainly the Iranian leadership is unified. He added that the seizure was not a rogue action by hardliners, but part of a deliberate posture. The whole war started on miscalculations, and this is another miscalculations. The message from Iran's security establishment, as projected through the IRGC, was that control of the Strait is now a central element of Tehran's bargaining position, and it is one they intend to hold on the other side of the debate in Rome. An academic in international relations offered a different emphasis. She described a more fractured picture of policy debates within Iran while warning that similar fractures can be seen in Washington's approach. In her view, the deeper problem is a collapse of trust across the board between Tehran and Washington, between the parties operating in and around the region, and critically, between neighbors whose economies rely on unfettered passage through that narrow channel of water. As she argued for a return to a status quo ante, a diplomatic restoration of the rules and arrangements that once kept global commerce moving. But she conceded the practical difficulty of that return, noting bluntly that for Iran, the Strait of Hormuz is its lifeline, its major leverage. These competing narratives, one of unified resolve, the other a fragmented calculation, are not merely academic. They are the terms by which the immediate crisis is understood, and they determine whether the next steps lead to negotiation, further coercion, or something darker. The facts on the water are stark. Iranian naval forces say they have seized two MSD-affiliated container ships and fired on a third vessel as they asserted control in the strait. The names, flags, and exact ownership structures of modern cargo ships can be labyrinthine. Many operate under time charters, different registries, and complex corporate arrangements. What matters for the moment is less the legal paperwork and more the signal. Iran was demonstrating capability and will at a choke point that controls a significant share of the world's seaborne oil and liquid natural gas traffic. Why the Strait of Hormuz matters cannot be overstated. It is, in strategic terms, one of the narrowest and most consequential waterways on Earth. A relatively small geographic bottleneck channels a huge proportion of global energy flows. For Iran, which sits astride the strait's northern approaches, the waterway is both a vulnerability and a lever. For exporters and importers from Asia to Europe, disruption can translate quickly into higher prices at the pump, volatility in financial markets, and broader economic pain. That strategic reality helps explain Tehran's rhetoric and the IRGC's actions. In the words captured in the video and in public statements, Iran knows the value of controlling the Strait of Hormuz. The point being driven home is straightforward. In the calculus of Tehran's security apparatus, allowing unfettered passage for ships perceived as hostile or complicit in attacks on Iranian interests is no longer acceptable. But legal and diplomatic terrain complicate any simple reading. International maritime law enshrines the principle of innocent passage, and coastal states have rights and responsibilities that overlap with the freedoms of navigation. The scholar in Rome noted that international law is clear with regards to maritime borders and maritime exclusive navigation zones, and that geography is a permanent constraint on policy. In other words, Iran's geographic advantage is real, but the legal framework that governs that advantage is multi-layered and contested. Equally important is the political theater surrounding these actions. Iran's parliamentary speaker has been publicly urging diplomacy. He has been floated by some in the West as a possible interlocutor in talks aimed at de-escalation. From Washington came a different tone. The White House signaled impatience and warned of consequences while insisting that it seeks a negotiated end to the broader conflict. And then there is the blunt political messaging that overshadows subtle diplomacy, declarations of intent, public deadlines, and the often messy interplay between public rhetoric and back-channel negotiation. Observers in both Tehran and Rome flagged another uncomfortable reality. Tight actions on the water are being gamified for audiences at home and abroad. The IRGC's footage was not raw dash cam material. It was a production from a force that understands the optics of modern conflict. The images were designed to show competence, control, and crucially, resolve. When a state projects competence at a strategic choke point, it changes the bargaining dynamics. It raises the cost of coercion. It elevates that state's leverage in any negotiation over the wider war and its various theaters, from missile strikes to the control of sea lanes to the question of indirect and direct strikes at competing forces in the region. Even as Tehran asserts control, critics warn that this posture risks provoking miscalculation. One of the analysts pointed to the recent history of missed signals. The whole war started on miscalculations, and this is another miscalculation. Misreading intent, misreading capabilities, or responding precipitously to staged operations could produce an escalation. Neither side wants a spiral that begins with seized ships and ends with broader strikes, perhaps drawing in regional partners. Compounding the danger is the messaging from Washington. The U.S. president has spoken of waiting for Iran to show its hand, of pressing for accountability, yet also of an openness to negotiations, a dual track that can appear simultaneously ready for force and for diplomacy. That ambiguity can be useful as pressure, but it can also be destabilizing if Tehran reads it as evidence of a lack of resolve, or conversely as an opportunity to press its own leverage. The academic voice in Rome urged a return to quiet diplomacy behind closed doors and not on tweets and social media, arguing that public posturing typically does not help delicate negotiations. She said both the Iranian blockade and the United States' own interdictions in the waters around Iran are both violations of international law, and warned that every tit-for-tat increases the economic and humanitarian stakes. And here the stakes are large. A sustained disruption of shipping in the Strait of Hormuz would ripple through global markets. Insurance rates for ships would spike. Shipping routes would grow longer and more expensive as vessels detour around the Cape of Good Hope, increasing fuel consumption and delivery times. Energy exporting economies would face revenue shocks. Consumers and importing economies would feel rising costs at the pump. The global economy, already vulnerable to shocks, would not absorb a prolonged closure or even repeated sporadic disruptions easily. Yet even as economists count the cost, diplomats and strategists are plotting pathways out for Iran. Any negotiation that preserves vital interests, security guarantees, relief from targeted economic measures, and recognition of certain maritime prerogatives will be more attractive than a war of attrition. For Western capitals, the aim is to reopen shipping lanes, secure crews and DTA, are further seizures without rewarding aggressive behavior. In practical terms, compromise is likely to be messy. The scholar in Rome suggested that a return to the pre-crisis status quo is an ideal, but warned it is not sufficient by itself. The war that has unfolded since late winter has altered the calculus of many actors, militarily and politically. Any durable settlement will have to address the larger grievances and the security questions that now punctuate the region: the nuclear issue, missile capabilities, proxy networks, and the mechanisms for verifying compliance. Back on the water, the IRGC's message continues to be simple and uncompromising: accept Iran's claim to a central role in the security of the Strait, and do not expect Tehran to allow the transit of ships it deems threatening. One of the IRGC's spokespeople put it this way: Iran is ready for negotiations only to end this war of aggression, but Iran's control of the Strait of Hormuz will remain forever. Those are not words designed to soothe. They are words that aim to harden expectations and to reshape the strategic conversation. Yet diplomacy does not only happen in grand statements, it happens in quiet negotiations and third-party mediation, in the back and forth of envoys and intermediations. It can also happen through careful confidence-building measures, protocols around inspections, clear rules for identifying suspect vessels, or third-party guarantees for safe passage. Each such measure requires a degree of trust that at present is thin. If the international community hopes to avoid prolonged disruption, the immediate priorities would include secure and immediate humanitarian protections for crews, clear communications channels between commercial operators and naval authorities on both sides, and the pursuit of a narrowly focused agreement to keep shipping moving while broader issues are negotiated. The alternative is a series of tit-for-tat moves that slowly but inexorably erode certainty for maritime traffic. There is another less tangible cost: the normalization of coercion as a tool of statecraft. If seizures, blockades, and the threat of force become accepted parts of day-to-day geopolitics, then the threat of force for conflict lowers. The genius of international order, for all its weaknesses, has been to create predictable norms for commerce and navigation. When those norms are systematically challenged, unpredictability rises. Markets react, alliances recalibrate. The risk appetite of regional actors changes. So where does this leave us? In the near term, expect more diplomatic signaling, some public posturing, and likely more intelligence activity beneath the surface. Expect commercial operators to reroute, to increase vigilance, and to press insurers for clarity. Expect third-party mediators to be tested as they try to thread the needle between immediate operational fixes and larger political settlements, and expect, unless steps are taken to rebuild, see key. Confidence, episodic escalation that makes the maritime environment more dangerous. It is possible to imagine a de-escalatory path. It would require creative diplomacy, credible guarantees, and a willingness from both sides to compartmentalize issues, to separate the immediate mechanics of navigation and crew safety from the larger, more intractable political disputes. It would also require an honest accounting of the cost of continued confrontation, economic, strategic, and human, and the patience to see through agreements that may move incrementally rather than resolve every outstanding grievance at once. For now, the Strait remains a theater of contest. The ships that pass through it carry more than cargo. They carry the weight of politics, of history, and of strategic calculation. Each boarding, each exchange of radio traffic, and each carefully produced video is a line in a larger argument about who controls what and who will be trusted to keep the lights on in a fragile glob. Our system. The coming days and weeks will test whether cooler heads can translate leverage into negotiation rather than escalation. The images released by the IRGC made the point forcefully: control of the waterways is a lever Tehran believes it can and will use. Whether that lever becomes a bridge to talks or a fulcrum for broader conflict depends now on decisions taken in quiet rooms and public squares alike.